All right, now months of bitter campaigning has now come to a climax. People across the United States are turning out in big numbers to cast their ballots to elect the next president. The situation, of course, is pretty tense for both candidates and also for their spouses. We heard a little while back Joe Biden speak to his supporters in Pennsylvania, and his wife, Jill Biden, is also campaigning for her husband in the crucial swing state of Florida. She spoke with some of the supporters. Listening to what she had to say.
Florida is a very important state. We're hoping to win it. We are not taking any vote for granted. Joe and I are out here working as hard as we can, so that's why we're here today in Florida. Look at how many people have voted. I think it's over, 100 million people have voted. So I think people want to make their voices heard. They want to make their votes count, and I think it's terrific. Characters on the ballot, and Joe and Donald Trump could not be more opposite. So if you're looking for a president that is strong and resilient and will be a steady, calm, let's say calm leader to get rid of this chaos of Donald Trump's America, if you're tired of it all, then you must vote for my husband, Joe Biden.
All right, so that was Jill Biden there stating that Florida is one of the crucial swing states, and she would want every single voter who believes in the American dream to in fact step out and cast their vote to elect the next president. And also to give us more insights in terms of what is happening in terms of the voter turnout, and also as to how the Americans are in fact turning out in big numbers to vote today. We are joined in by Cindy Saints-Pang, who is joining us live from Washington, D.C. Now, Cindy, let me begin by asking you this. This is being touted as arguably one of the most important elections in American history. Now, Donald Trump in 2016, he defied the odds. He, in many ways, went against the opinion polls. And this time round again, opinion polls favor Joe Biden, but Donald Trump says that he's got it in him to still come out on top. What's the opinion there in America?
Well, yes, that's right. And I would say the main difference now but in 2020 but with 2016 is last time Donald Trump was a businessman, an outsider who was running to shake up Washington. Now, of course, he's an incumbent president who has a record, and either love him or hate him, he elicits very strong, passionate feelings, which is why I think, as you said, we're having truly record turnouts, and his loyal fans are lining up. Republicans prefer to vote on Election Day itself. They like that Election Day feeling. Democrats, by a margin of 2-1, prefer the early voting or the mail-in voting, especially in the pandemic. So Donald Trump is hoping for a real surge on this election day of his voters turning out. And we'll just have to see how that plays out.
I think that's an important point that you made then. Also about the voter turnout. More than 100 million people have already voted even before the polling day began. Most of them voted through the mail-in voting system. But Donald Trump still says that that is a system that's actually prone to fraud. How is this being perceived within the people in the United States who are actually sending their votes through mail?
Right. Well, I think that independent experts say that there is very little evidence of voter fraud through the mail. And some states like Utah have been doing it only through the mail for years. So I think that it may have actually backfired in the sense that, as we've seen over the past few weeks, these incredible scenes of people standing in line, places like Atlanta, Georgia, for 8, 9, 10 hours, just determined to vote and thinking, okay, if there's problems now with the postal system, then we'll go and we'll vote in person on the early voting. So I think that this is a win either way for President Trump or for former Vice President Biden. It's a win for American democracy with so many people facing a pandemic to go out and cast their votes.
I think I'll discuss a bit more as to how it is in terms of the logistics of conducting an election during a pandemic. But first, let's listen in to some of the supporters of the American president. He seems to have some very dedicated supporters. He was, remember, a political outsider. He was essentially a business mogul. But he went on to become the 45th president of the United States, and some voters find him irresistible. A Trump voter from Houston in Texas tells us as to why he's drawn to the American president. Listen in.
I've studied the man, I've read his books, I've watched many of his speeches. If you go to promiseskept.com, you can see all the accomplishments. there's so many. There's too many to count, right? So there's not really much I disagree with him on, other than I really would like to see him fire Fauci when he gets reelected, which is already rumors on that. Just the way Fauci is just disrupted and trying to shut down our country. I myself haven't worn a mask in 8 months. I know that the disease is real, but the science is ultimately you quarantine the sick, not the healthy.
All right, so that was one of the committed voters for Donald Trump there, stating that he actually appreciates what Donald Trump has done in the difficult time of a pandemic. And this is what I want to discuss with Cindy, who is joining us live from Washington. This has not been a usual election. It is happening in the backdrop of a pandemic, something that we've not witnessed in almost about a century. And also holding an election during this time is going to be extremely hard, which is why we've seen a lot of mail-in votes that have been sent in. But in terms of what's been happening, in terms of at the polling stations, how confident and do people feel to actually walk into a polling station to cast their vote, knowing pretty well that there are so many infections that are being recorded every day in the United States?
Right. Well, to be honest, that is actually going better than I had feared. It seems that a lot of places have bigger venues, and there have been people waiting in long lines, but they are socially distanced. There's distance between them in lines, and you've had a lot of outside groups providing even food and pizza and entertainment, marching bands, and for people waiting in line. So I think a lot of young people stepped up to volunteer. A lot of times you'll get elderly or retired people working the polls. Some are volunteers, some are paid. Mm-hmm. But I've had a lot of young people stepping up to perform that role. And I think all in all, again, I hate to repeat myself, but I am really thrilled to see the turnout as it is. All different ways to me, no matter how you vote is fine. But that there has been such excellent turnout. And in some places, now this is anecdotal, of course, because it's a vast country, but some places are saying, there's been brisk traffic, voters, but not the long lines that we were perhaps seeing in places on the first day of early voting, because there was early voting in so many states that many people as you said, 100 million have already voted.
Absolutely, indeed. And I also, Cindy, want you to dwell a little bit upon the body language of the American president when he spoke a little while back at the RNC in Virginia. We know for a fact that he's been crisscrossing the country. He held at least about 18 different campaign rallies in the last 3 days, so it's quite understandable that he's tired. But was he looking a little bit fatigued after this very grueling campaign that he's carried out?
Well, that struck me as well. And the excellent soundbite that you had where he said, winning is easy. For me, losing is tough. And you know how he likes to project confidence at all times. And I thought that was maybe a very raw and honest moment for him that, of course, he is down in the polls. And we have to wait and see and let people vote and let the votes be counted. But I thought that there was a bit of raw moment for him saying, maybe contemplating that he could lose.
Absolutely. That is something that Donald Trump will be thinking long and hard about. But Cindy, do continue to stay on with this, because there's another very crucial aspect that I want to talk to you about, because the results may take a fair bit of time to actually come forth. The contest could pretty much morph not just into an election day, but into an election week if the competition is too close to call. So let's in fact talk a bit about the moments that the presidential race will hinge on and what we need to watch out for. Now, mail-in ballots tend to take longer to process than the in-person votes. This year, millions more have voted through mail-in ballots than ever before because of the pandemic. Now, over 100 million votes have already been cast, and now due to this, there could be a lot of difficulty in actually tallying all the numbers and getting the results out as soon as possible. And there could be quite a bit of a delay in terms of how the votes could get counted, because the processes and procedures in different states vary. Now, on the other hand, we might have a result in the presidential race by the end of the night if either candidate were to achieve some decisive wins in some of the key states. And the data from the huge early voter turnout could also provide certain important insights on how the election is unfolding at this point of time. The first polls close in Indiana and Kentucky. Indiana has voted with the winner of the presidential election every time since 1956, but it is infamous for its slow vote counting. Next up is Florida, which is a crucially an important state. The polls here close at 12 a.m. GMT. The state also counts votes pretty quickly. All that needs to be seen is whether Donald Trump will be able to win the crucial state of Florida. A lot hinges for him on there. As we keep an eye on Florida, North Carolina is also to be looked out for as it counts its early ballots pretty quickly and also tends to report them first. The polls close in North Carolina and also Ohio at about 12:30 a.m. GMT. New results may come in two states. Michigan and Texas will close polling by about 1 a.m. GMT, and then there is Pennsylvania. However, the election results in Pennsylvania will not be known soon. In fact, it's pretty possible that the election result in Pennsylvania may not be known for days to come. Now, off to the next hour, 2 a.m. GMT, where we could expect results from Arizona, which is accustomed to early voting and also counts its votes pretty quickly. The results out of Iowa ought to be handled with a fair bit of care. Like Ohio, it used to be in the play for the Democrats. Some might even wonder whether it returns to the blue fold in 2020. Next up is California, Oregon and also Washington. The closure of polls in these states will produce a definitive call of the race. And on to the East Coast, the election results could be out in Alaska. A critical day is, of course, unfolding for the United States. And indeed, because of the ramification that it has for the rest of the world as well, as Americans choose as to who will reside at the White House. This, remember, is an extremely crucial election, but there is a bit of uncertainty as to how quickly the results will be known. So let me bring Cindy in here. Cindy, this is something that a lot of people have been talking about, and I'm pretty sure this is being debated about even within the United States. Now, there are different rules and different procedures for different states and how they actually count their mail-in ballots, and this is what is creating a lot of uncertainty. You are, I understand, in Washington. Give us an idea as to what is happening there and how quickly can we expect a result in Washington?
Right. Well, Washington, to be perfectly honest, does not weigh in that much. We have a grand total of 3 electoral votes, and Washington, D.C. is about 96% Democratic, so it will go for Joe Biden. But you honed in on the most important, some of the most important states, and as you said, tonight I especially am going to be watching North Carolina and Florida for some early hints. Because those states, North Carolina is my home state, it normally leans Republican. The last couple of years, it's been more what we call a swing state, a thinner majority. It could go either way. And I feel like since we may know the results, if all goes well and there's no snags, know the results fairly early, that could be a good indication. The polls are very close, and there's also a very big Senate race there. So seeing how North Carolina and Florida go may sort of tell us, you know, which way the wind is blowing. Whereas, as you said, a lot of people, Pennsylvania seems like it's always like the crucible of the elections. But we may not know until Friday because they don't count there, as you said. They don't count their votes until then. Some people are even looking at Texas as normally as a huge bounty of electoral votes, and it's normally solid Republican. Some Democrats are even hoping that it could go Democratic this time. But we'll see if that were to happen, then I would say it's a very good night for Joe Biden. But we'll have to don't get ahead of ourselves on that one.
Absolutely, indeed. Texas, of course, remains to be a very crucial state that we need to look out for. Meanwhile, a little while back, Democrat vice presidential nominee landed in Detroit. She urged the people to vote on Election Day. Kamala Harris also said that she wants to remind the people that they're being seen, they're being heard, and they are the ones who will get to decide as to who will be sitting in the White House making crucial calls for the people of the United States of America. Listen in to what the vice presidential nominee, Kamala Harris, had to say to her supporters.
I was elected to the United States Senate actually 4 years ago today. It was a bittersweet day that day, as we all remember. Well, at least it was for me. And I got to the United States Senate, and I'm only the second black woman in the history of the United States elected. In the entire history of the United States. I'm currently the only black woman in the United States Senate. So I get there, and it's a big place, the the United States Capitol, our nation's capital. It's a big place. And I'm walking through the halls, and then there's this big area where all the senators meet. And everybody has their own desk. And they all sit there, and they're all very important. And I sat at my desk, and guess who the person was over to my right, my seatmate? Gary Peters. Gary Peters, who from day one was like, I'm Gary, how you doing? And showed me the ropes every day, was just so full of advice and friendship and support. And talking to me. He said, I want to talk to you always about Michigan. I want to talk to you about job creation. I want to talk to you about the auto industry. This is who Gary is. When we sit in these rooms, when there are no cameras or there are cameras, Gary is always fighting for Michigan. And it's going to be a tight race, guys. It's going to be a tight race. So please do everything you can and talk to everybody you know. And let's get Gary back in the United States.
All right, so that was Kamala Harris there addressing her supporters, stating that it is important for the people of the United States of America to make their voices heard. And the way they can actually do it is by going to the ballot stations and casting their ballots. And Cindy is still with me. Now this, Cindy, we've heard a lot of what both Donald Trump and also Joe Biden have been saying all through their campaigning. But in many ways, it'll all boil down to what Donald Trump has done in the last 4 years. Has he made the lives of common Americans better? And especially in the aftermath of what the COVID-19 lockdowns have done, where they've hammered the economy, so many people have lost their jobs. A lot of people in America actually still feel that it is Donald Trump who could actually perform better on the economy. Is this what may bring the incumbent president back to power again?
Well, I think if he does win, then I think you're right that that's probably on the nose, and that's what it is, because that is his strongest point. But I feel like this time around, the pandemic, COVID-19 is dominating, and some people feel that they don't want the economy closed down, and they like the president's approach, and others feel like he's not listening to the scientists, and he's been playing it down himself. And they feel like basically it's a matter of life or death to change leadership and to have some stricter measures in place. The president, as you know, has been saying, we're turning a corner and we're going to have a vaccine soon. But some members of his own administration are skeptical that it will take months to get a widespread distribution of a vaccine. So I think even more usually, as one political advisor once said, is the economy stupid? Normally it is, and of course it still is, but it seems like the pandemic is dominating even that this time.
I think that's very well put. Thank you very much indeed, Cindy Sain, for joining us and getting us all those insights from Washington. This is, of course, the biggest night in American political scene, and it remains to be seen as to which way the Americans will, of course, swing. Donald Trump is hoping to make a comeback in the White House again. He's put out a very spirited campaign, but challenging him is, of course, the Democrat Joe Biden, who's saying that if you elect me, there will be no red or blue states. There'll only be the United States of America. Which way will the Americans vote? We'll be getting to know in just a few hours from now.